So today we have what will probably be one of two course review videos. They're not going to be particularly inspiring. I'm going to read through the course review sheet and hopefully clarify terms there. If you get stuck, please go through the other videos, refer through your notes. If you get completely stuck on a term or don't understand something, please email and we'll try and get that clarified and worked out. We've covered quite a lot of material in this class. Uh, Hopefully, it's been a good mix of technical information, photographing the moon, doing our wildlife assignment, thinking about some of the technical aspects of photography. Here, the image of banding related to bit depth, a higher bit depth, reducing the amount of banding that you have in an image. And for many things, we can correct and improve on what we've got in post-production. But of course, understanding the things in the first place is going to be critical. So I'm just going to dive into the review sheet here. Please take notes as we're going through. I'll add in a few additional terms in here as well, but hopefully it's all going to be straightforward. So Visual Theory 2, course review, lens design. Lens design has become increasingly sophisticated, and there are many things to consider in making the best choice. Build quality and optical quality are the most important. Whatever lens you are using, an understanding of the technical limitations of the optical system is valuable and allows the ability to fix simple problems. In lens design, a single lens element is known as a simple lens. A compound lens is a construction of a variety of these simple lens elements to correct for image distortion. For example, chromatic aberration results from different colors of light refracting through a lens at different angles and coming into focus at different points close to the focal plane. The result is seen as color fringing. In lens design, chromatic aberration is corrected by the use of compound lenses and lens coatings. That little example in Photoshop here and the test that you did yourself on your own lenses. Often this is a great way to see the quality of a lens, and if I'm looking to buy a lens, I'll specifically look at images like this to see if I can spot chromatic aberration. But if I zoom in on that part of the lens here, you can see the color fringing on the edge of the leaf here, and that's a great tell. Chromatic aberration for me is a critical thing in choosing a lens, very close to overall image sharpness, and we'll come on to that again in a moment. Spherical aberration results in softening of the image due to the curvature of a lens and the variant in distance light travels between the lens and focal plane. A ray of light at the edge of the lens has less distance to travel than a ray hitting the center of a lens. It is also less glass to travel through. And of course, when light hits glass, it slows down. If there's less glass, it's going to slow down differently. Well, the result is a softening in the image. Lens flare comes from non-image forming rays of light in the optical system and results in a mild clouding of the image and reduction of image contrast. It can be corrected by using a lens hood or by shading the non-image forming rays of light coming into the lens. Please remember or underscore that definition, non-image forming rays of light in the optical system. Iris flare comes from non-image forming rays of light reflecting the shape of the iris or the aperture in the lens. It most often forms when shooting directly into the sun and can be corrected by moving the camera to a different position. Coma also results from shooting into the sun and looks like the shape of a comet. Vignetting can be seen as a darkening at the corners of an image that is most often seen in lower end lenses and results from limited covering power of a lens. Covering power, we think of that when we look through our viewfinder, we see a rectangular image, but of course the lens itself is circular and it creates a circular image. The edges of that circle are where we see a little bit of vignetting on a lower end lens. That is to say, it gets a little darker at the edges, but we're also going to see the limits of the optical power of the lens at the edges as well. And so edge definition would be the term thinking about how sharp an image is at the edge of an image as well. So a list of additional terms that you have here. Lens speed refers to the widest aperture of a lens. So if you asked how fast your lens is, It's a question asking what's the maximum aperture, 1.4, 1.8 perhaps on a prime, 2.8 for a high-end kit lens, f4 or thereabouts would be very common on a good, fairly good kit lens. The sweet spot of the lens is referring to the aperture at which the optics of a lens perform best. Generally speaking, 1 to 2 stops down. If you're talking about pure optics, probably 2 stops down. But in practical terms, coming down 1 stop is going to benefit you a great deal. So if you have a prime lens or your kit zoom, f2.8 is your maximum aperture. Bring it down 1-2 clicks, probably 2 clicks is going to see quite a dramatic difference in the optical performance of your lens without killing your shallow depth of field. And it's going to be a balancing act between the two. But the recommendation for best optical performance would be 1 stop down from your maximum aperture. Weight is a consideration for your back, and if you're buying a lens or if you're going to be working as a wedding photographer or a photojournalist or sports photographer, you're carrying a lot of equipment around on your back all day, that weight is a good consideration. If you're working in the studio, less of a consideration, and generally speaking, a higher end lens will be heavier with more glass in it. So it may be a balancing act trying to figure out what the best equipment is, and weight would also be a consideration in there. Close focus, the ability to get in close with the lens, is a great addition for all-round work. Again, if you're a wedding photographer, a sports photographer, or a photojournalist, being able to get in close to do close-up detail images is going to be a critical part of the equation. If you're working in the studio as a studio portrait photographer, then that close focus is less of an issue for you. Image stabilization will improve handheld camera shake, and this is getting increasingly better as a technology. It's like a gyroscope within the lens system, or indeed in the camera. In some of the high-end cameras now, image stabilization is built in to the camera. It minimizes the minute camera shake from handheld cameras. But if you're doing motion blur pictures, if you're photographing, got your camera on a tripod, photographing a river or moving water, for example, as motion blur, turn it off, because it will then do the opposite effect. It will try to compensate for movement that is not there, and it will soften your image and work in the reverse of what you want. Image distortion refers to either barrel or pincushion distortion. That's especially important for architectural work, or if you're photographing flat artwork. Chromatic aberration, of course, color fringing, is almost as important as overall sharpness, and edge definition refers to the sharpness of a lens at the edges. We've got some links down here there to help you, and let's see if I can dig in to some of those. Sigma, as an independent lens company, have produced some great lenses. 24-70 is one of their high-end lenses, and a lot of technical information that they give. Here we can see the simple lens lenses, or the single lens elements that are called simple lenses. I know it's confusing. And the construction of that lens in various groups. We can see, we could count the individual elements and the groups that they're in. 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. Various other charts for distortion, and this in particular I think is really cool. If you're an architectural photographer, this might be an important thing to consider. Barrel and pincushion distortion on a zoom lens or a wide-angle zoom lens are going to be particularly noticeable. And so on this lens, we can see at the 24mm focal length, minimal distortion, a little bit of barrel distortion there, and a little bit of pincushion at 70mm on the edges there. This is pretty remarkable quality of a lens. But if you're photographing architecture, you're probably going to want a wider angle lens, and so the image distortion becomes a particular interest to you there. Nikon, amazing lenses that are being produced, and certainly traditionally Nikon were known for higher quality glass, and a lot of photographers went to Nikon purely for that reason. The digital lenses for mirrorless cameras now, the construction is slightly different because of the distance between the focal plane where the image sensor is in the camera and the first element. Needs to be increased, but some amazing lenses here. Let me see. Just have a look through and scroll through. Pick a lens and dig in and see if you can look at the things that we're talking about in this review and how they relate to the kind of equipment that you might be interested in buying. Canon, all camera manufacturers now, they generally have 3 tiers or levels of quality of equipment. The entry level equipment is going to be inexpensive, less expensive, but really not going to deliver what you need as a professional photographer. The mid-range lenses, it's a significant jump in cost, but really that's where you need to be looking as a start point. And then as a real specialist, there are going to be the high-end lenses, which are going to cost a whole lot more. So, telephoto lenses, high-end for any of these manufacturers, $8,000-$10,000 is kind of range that you're going to be looking at. The mid-range, $1,500. The lower end, $300 to $500 is what you're going to be looking at. But again, these things are laid out slightly differently, but they've got all the information that you need to be aware of. There we go. Optical image stabilization, up to 5 stops of shake correction, which is a pretty remarkable claim. In addition, the other link here to DP Review, and they have some great lens reviews. Let's pull that page over for you just a little bit. This is pretty cool. The best lenses for each of the different manufacturers and the reviews, and of course their awards that they give. Gold award is utterly astonishing. Silver award is generally pretty amazing. Below that is probably pretty good. So in a sense, take the grading of these lenses with a pinch of salt. But this is a great resource for you if you're looking to buy a new lens. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there on this review. 12 minutes on this one. I only have 15 minutes on a video. What a relief. And we'll come back and we'll look at these other things on a second review.